Coming up this weekend, we have one of our 3 ranked fighters on this card competing in a big-time co-main event, that being Santiago, the Argentine Dagger Ponzinibbio, taking on Michel Demolidor Pereira. And when you look at this fight, I mean, a couple of very dynamic strikers. Matt, I know you have a lot to say about Argentina's Santiago Ponzinibbio. There's so many X factors to his game that we could spend a couple of days just talking about that. But he's been in some massive fights. And not to say that Michel Pereira hasn't, but in a spot like this weekend, Ponzinibbio reaching outside of the rankings and Michel Pereira on a 4-fight win streak. If he gets a win this weekend, all of a sudden you're ranked and you're off to the races against some big-time names in a really stacked division. What do you make of that?
I think it's going to be a really tough fight ahead of him this weekend, because the thing about Michel Pereira is he is an incredible striker, but there's always a moment in every single fight where you start to get a little bit nervous no matter who it is. And I always go back to the Niko Price fight where he fought, maybe not the perfect fight for the first 10 minutes, but you get the idea. He's hurting Price every time he gets close to him. He's on the back foot. He's moving around really well. But the problem is, with all that movement, and with all those power shots, and when you're fighting a guy who's durable as all get out, like Niko Price, near the end of that fight, we did see Michel start to slow down. And Price, it wasn't enough to get a 10-8 round, but he definitely did rally enough in that third round to make the fight interesting when it did go to the scorecards. And for Pereira, that's the weird thing about him. I'm so excited for all of his fights, but I'm almost getting into that, like, Muslim Salikov area, where in the back of my mind, there is that version of him who doesn't have that crazy output, who will stand in the mirror a little bit in some of his fights, and I think he will have a lot of trouble against Ponzinibbio if we do see that version of him this weekend, because let's say he does go into that third round mode like he did against Niko Price, or even against some moments against Andre Fialho where he lands some big shots, and then you just sort of step off the gas and not really do anything. If you're getting into a fight like that against Ponzinibbio, who is known for his accuracy and for the ability to throw in combination, that's going to be really tough ask for Michel Pereira, who does rely a lot more on his one-strike capabilities than throwing in combo, because that's the thing I always go back to with Ponzinibbio. He's someone who loves to throw his right hand followed by the left hook. It's almost like a preset combination. Like, the second you see the right hand come, it's almost like a diversion for the left hook to really land after the fact. And if he's able to get his leg kicks going early, which is one of his best weapons, always go back to the Neil Magny fight. And yes, Neil Magny has not been able to learn how to check leg kicks in the past 38 UFC fights, but still, that was a main event slot. A lot of pressure on Ponzinibbio to look good in his home country. And he put on an absolutely amazing performance. His boxing looked really good. His leg kicks looked really good. And then he had his, like, Klay Thompson moment. He tore his Achilles and ACL. Now, those weren't the injuries Ponzinibbio had. He had MRSA. He had broken his hand. He had a lot of sort of separate injuries that were really bad, if we're being honest. And they did keep him out for a really long time. And he did look a step slow against Li Jingliang in that performance. But again, coming back with your first fight being against a guy like Li Jingliang, things are probably going to happen. And he did eat a big power shot early in that fight that did put him out. And that is something about Ponzinibbio. I do think he has a good chin, but I do worry about his striking defense. Lorenz Larkin back in the day was able to finish him. Li Jingliang was able to hurt him. Jeff Neal didn't finish him, but he definitely hurt him on a couple moments throughout that fight. Again, I like the chin out of Ponzinibbio, but he's almost too offensively oriented sometimes, where he'll chase his opponent around after he hurts them. And let's say this is one of those fights where he hurts Pereira with a big right hand and he finds himself chasing after him. That's when you step into, like, a flying knee that no one ever saw coming, because that's how wild the style of Demolidor is. Like, you can't just look at, like, Tapology and see, oh wow, flying knee finish. It doesn't do it justice. Like, the athleticism that this guy brings to the cage is very uncanny. And again, I can't say enough great things about this fight. You have a ranked fighter who there's some question marks about him ever since his layoff versus one of the more entertaining guys in the division. I think it's going to be phenomenal.
And for Ponzinibbio, a guy who spent quite a bit of time at American Top Team, you're going to have the camp there. For Michel Pereira, since he's moved camp to the United States from Brazil, he's implemented more wrestling in his game. So Zalim Imadaev is one of those fights where it was all Michel Pereira. We were sold a bill of goods on Zalim, and he did not deliver. He beats Chaos Williams, implements a little bit of the takedown, was able to get things done on the feet. The Niko Price fight, he fought well for 10 minutes, and then for the last 15 minutes, he was on the retreat. And against Andrea Fialho, he did have a takedown out there, but really did look crisp in that one. I was very interested by the fact that Michel Pereira is one of those guys that, I know we talked about this in his previous fights, where he's got videos on Instagram where he's like dancing on a treadmill getting ready, and it scares the bejesus out of me and Paul Felder, I'm sure. But for Michel, all of his videos and all of his pictures in the last few months have been out of Academia Box Ulysses Pereira with Lucas Pontes, a boxer out of Brazil, and he is wearing the weird boxing cup that they wear in training. He's wearing the headgear. He's getting ready, and he's mixing in a lot of that pure boxing. And I think that's very interesting because you already know how explosive he is. You already know how light he can be on his feet. I'm interested to see Michel Pereira where you turn up the gas tank a little bit, you turn up the technique a little bit. Will we see him A, maybe a little more hesitant, B, a little bit more refined, and C, maybe he can bring together another well-rounded game plan like he did against Andrea Fialho against a Ponzinibbio, because I feel like that's what you need to beat a Ponzinibbio.
You do, and that's why I honestly don't look at his boxing training as being a big advantage. And feel free to disagree with you. Feel free to disagree with me if you want to, but this is kind of the way I've looked at his boxing training. I don't care how long Michel Pereira boxes, he will not be as good naturally boxing as Santiago Ponzinibbio is in this fight. So I don't know if you making the fight more at his range is going to help you a lot. Yes, it might make him more comfortable in a couple situations, but I'm almost worried that he's going to put the fight in a position that might help Santiago, because Ponzinibbio can hurt him with the leg kicks at long range, hurt him with the body kicks at long range, and then that's going to force Michel to go on the inside. Well, if he's been boxing a lot on the inside, he's probably going to be willing to trade one or two more shots than he normally would with a guy like Ponzinibbio. And I would not want to get into a boxing match with Ponzinibbio, who, yes, he can get caught by a big shot here or there, but his hand speed's almost unparalleled at this division, and I really do think that's his big key to this fight, is going to be his hand speed.
To me, it's almost, and I can liken it, in my own situation in the past, you look at it for Pereira, almost like going to a batting cage and just continuing to hit balls and having a batting cage session. It's going to make you better with your timing, but it's going to help him defensively, having been put in some of those situations in training to have the muscle memory just constantly over and over again for the past couple of months.
But that's my point. I'd rather him just stay on the outside and stay on his bike than ever be on the inside.
I'm absolutely fine, and I hope to see some defensive improvements out of Michel Pereira. But again, we look at this fight and we have a look at the odds. A little bit of an inside baseball and breaking down the fourth wall. I write these odds. I don't look at them when I do my tape study. I write them down before each individual video so they don't creep in. I was very surprised that Ponzinibbio opened a favorite at a minus 150. He's now minus 105 underdog. For Michel Pereira, open a plus 130, minus 120 or thereabouts is the comeback. So the odds have flipped on this fight. Tapology votes, I'm going to say over under 65% Ponzinibbio.
I'll say over. He is the bigger name.
Look at that. 571 total votes, 66% Pereira, 78% by decision for the 34% that have Ponzinibbio, 77% by decision. And Matt, I got to say, for Ponzinibbio, again, we saw him with that extended layoff off of the win over a tough Neil Magny. Then he loses to Li Jingliang by finish. He goes out and beats Miguel Baeza and looked very fresh in that fight. And then had a very close and competitive, I know it's a split decision loss to Jeff Neal. I thought Ponzinibbio won.
I was going to say, you guys don't hear me say this all the time, but I did think Ponzinibbio won that fight.
And I really liked his output. And again, I hate to use the word once more, so quick in two sentences, but the freshness out of him in that one.
And that's the thing that we sometimes talk about. You can look bad in some wins, and you can look good in some losses. The Ponzinibbio who fought Jeff Neal can definitely beat Michel Pereira if he pushes forward, doesn't eat the big shots, and that's the key too. Jeff Neal's known for his accuracy, and Jeff Neal did look good in that fight. It wasn't the bad version of Jeff Neal who fought like Wonderboy Thompson. Jeff Neal's a much more accurate striker than Michel is, especially on the back foot. I think if Ponzinibbio does throw in combination, Michel, he'll move side to side, but more in like an unorthodox manner. When he is being defensive, he won't move straight back and do that weird move where he like bounces off the cage, you know what I mean? Ponzinibbio likes to throw in combination, and if you just move backwards, those combos are going to follow you, and one of those big shots will hit. I just think that Michel Pereira's good ranges are also at Ponzinibbio's good ranges, and unless Michel can knock him out early, I do like Ponzinibbio by decision because I like his output. I like his cardio a lot, if we're being honest, because he's someone who can fight with a really high output and sustain it into the third round. So I like Ponzinibbio in this matchup. I'm a little worried about his chin at this stage of his career because he has been in a few hard fights, and he is a little bit older at this stage of his career, but I think he's the much more skilled fighter in this one.
And Michel Pereira is really on the hot streak, not just due to the fact that he's on a 4-fight win streak, and they've all been entertaining, and you can gain something from each and every one of them. Sure. His last fight against Andrea Fialho. How good does Andrea look right now? I mean, it's like Bargnani in 2006. We're going Andrea, and I'm very excited about it. He's got a really tough fight coming up against Jake Matthews, but when I do look at it for Michel, you got to consider too, Andrea's coming in on short notice, and he is a pretty good boxer and has some of those qualities that Ponzinibbio has as well. So I do like Michel Pereira. I love the boxing training that he's done lately. I'm maybe looking too much into it, but I do like the movement out of Pereira. And the thing that I like the most, again, the controlled wildness, when he's able to pop off one of those flying knees, one of those wild shots, and if he's able to go out there and stun Ponzinibbio, I think Pereira has a good opportunity to get a win as well. I can certainly see Ponzinibbio going out there, fighting one of those wily veteran type of fights where he goes out there and grinds out a decision win. But man, I do like Michel Pereira here. But again, you can see positives and negatives for both guys.
It's going to be a phenomenal fight. Again, we don't put it on the fight of the night screen because we think it's going to be one-sided. I just look at Michel's boxing training as being like when Jamal Hill told Paul Craig, hey, jiu-jitsu, you think you're pretty good at this? I've been working on a couple things in the gym too. I just don't think it's the range that he wants to fight this fight at. Maybe he will feel more comfortable there, but I do look at that as slightly more of a detriment than as a positive, because that's the range Ponzinibbio can get a lot of his work done at. But this is going to be a phenomenal fight because both guys are really durable, so I don't expect a fast knockout for either guy.
This should be a great fight. Be sure to let us know down below in the comments section who you have in a big-time main event coming up with possible title implications after The Ultimate Fighter is concerned between Holm and Vieira. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say,
Let's get into it.